So now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to be talking about beyond the drive-through, modifying existing QSR fast casual premises and planning for new units in the age of delivery apps and ghost kitchens. Joining us for this fascinating topic is David Denney, the founder of the Denney Law Group. As you can see, David has an enormous amount of experience, not just in the practice of law, but in the service to the restaurant industry. He's been a board member for the Texas Restaurant Association. He's past president of the Greater Dallas Restaurant Association. His firm represents 3 2023 James Beard Award semifinalists. David has a broad scope practice, but his special niche is in that independent restaurant area. You can find more about him at his URL, foodbevlaw.com. David talks at all of our programs. He always makes us go, And so today will not be an exception. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Denney.
Thanks very much, Stephen. I appreciate it. It's always fun. I heard you tell Ted you appreciated his suggested solution. So now I feel like the bar has been raised for me to provide some potential solutions. I usually just identify problems. So we'll see where we go from here. But fast casual and QSR are near and dear to my heart simply because I grew up, as you might notice, that could be me in the back of that car in the drive-thru. And it was certainly me for a good part of my childhood. And luckily my palate has evolved, but still that desire for sugar, salt, fat, and acid coming out of a window in a warm bag, it has not abated, although I try not to eat QSR food. I can't help myself sometimes. So it's funny that here we are at the beginning of 2023, and just a few years ago in 2017 or 2018, I remember giving a presentation, I think in the Houston conference, and talking about how, man, third-party delivery has been adopted by 30% of all people in the space, and what are we going to do about it, and how are we going to keep it from eating into our profits? And then when 2020 came around and third-party delivery basically became war profiteers during the pandemic, we couldn't do anything about it, and now they are they have accelerated their integration into the restaurant space beyond their wildest dreams, simply by virtue of the pandemic, because we either had to use them or we were going to go out of business, because not everybody could just do curbside and takeout. So we have other ways to address the third-party delivery phenomenon and try to recapture some of those dollars that are going out the window, literally, to the third-party delivery services, some of which can be 30% of the gross of the order. Unless you have multiple units with the ability to put sort of a system-wide program in place, like I think McDonald's did one in 2018 with Uber Eats, and it's probably been renegotiated a number of times, but they initially made a system-wide 14,000 store deal with Uber Eats, and then they found themselves in the unenviable position of modifying 14,000 units that aren't cookie cutter and figuring out how to deal with third-party delivery. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's jump into the next slide. Thank you. So back in good old 2018, when all we had to worry about was the price of beef or corn or chicken, and we didn't have to worry about the government shutting our restaurants down and things like that, we had shelves. And when third-party delivery apps came, they either came to the counter and got in the way, or we were able to, like Chipotle here on the left, put our third-party delivery and to-go and even sort of digital app customer order in advance orders on shelving. And the general consensus around shelving was as close to the kitchen as possible and as close to an exit door as possible. Usually those are not, you can't have them both. They're mutually exclusive in almost every restaurant space. And so They found usually an inconvenient place near one of the exit doors, which always created a bottleneck. So you would find yourself trying to walk into a Chipotle and finding yourself in a line that you couldn't tell whether you were the in-store dining line, whether you were in line behind people who were there picking up, whether you were in line behind an Uber Eats or DoorDash driver. And we're still dealing with a lot of that chaos today. But the shelving situation has evolved drastically in 5 years to things called smart pods or smart shelves or food lockers. And so this picture on the right is a brand called Umi. That's actually a client of ours here in the Dallas area. And Umi basically rented a commissary kitchen. And the thing about commissary kitchens, and we're going to talk about them a little bit today during this window, commissary kitchens are usually a great investment because they don't have to be at the corner of Main and Main. They don't have to be in the depth of the trade area. They don't have to be the most attractive space. You don't have to spend a lot on exterior finish out. They just have to really be functional. And so to have a commissary kitchen that can either service multiple standalone units or to act as a way station for third-party delivery, or even, God willing, your own delivery service can be a real boon to a regional business model. So what Umi does is that it has a commissary kitchen space, and it has partnered with some local restaurants, but also it has created numerous what it calls, or what is called in the industry, digital brands. And digital brands are the brands that do not exist anywhere on brick and mortar except on websites and apps. And so, you know, they created something, I can't even remember, they're just crazy names, Chicken Monkey or something, I don't know. But anyway, so what they have are these smart lockers or smart pods. And so when people come to the Umi space, they can pick their food up out of the smart locker, or they can put these smart pods into apartment complexes, office buildings, college campuses, and probably even retail grocery, things like that. They haven't quite evolved into that yet, but apartment complexes, college campuses are huge for them, and office buildings. And so what they will then do is deliver food from 10 different brands into these smart lockers for people in the office complex to go pick up themselves. And so it results in a reduced delivery fee relative to a third-party delivery service because they're bringing numerous pieces of food to the same location. They also have the ability for somebody to order direct delivery, which probably compares in price to a third-party delivery. But this is sort of the evolution of the shelf. And so you have an app that pops your door open. Nobody else can get at your chicken sandwich. And it is actually pretty smart. So, you know, from moving to synthetic wood shelving that clogs up the doorway to an entire, I mean, there's no reason that people can't actually put these into their own restaurants for third-party delivery pickup either. Because there are many, many different brand names of smart shelves, smart lockers, food lockers, whatever you call them, that are on the market or coming to market. And so your QSR or fast casual unit can basically put them along a sidewall. They're temperature controlled, you know, to a degree, no pun intended, but they can be put a little bit out of the way so you can avoid that bottleneck that you really don't want in your front door, between your front door and the line. And it's a pretty efficient way to do it. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of these, especially for in-store dining. It's also a way to use app-based ordering and app-based pickup to basically avoid interaction with a human being, which is on the rise, especially in polls of younger diners. They don't typically want to deal with another person, which it is what it is. And I guess this product is not necessarily, that's not the first benefit, but it is a side benefit of that. But when you combine that with the cheaper real estate of a commissary kitchen relative to a centrally located QSR or fast casual unit that might need to have a lot of extra space for a drive-through or et cetera, it becomes a pretty good option. Next slide, I think. Thank you. Windows. We've had Windows, like our first slide from the 70s. We've had Windows for a really long time, but Windows now are taking on a life of their own. So we've seen technology driving the experience through smart lockers and apps and pickup and customer pickup. But going old school and cutting a hole in the building is still a viable option. These are two of our clients, Red Sticks on the right, Chef Uno, and Revolver Taco Lounge on the left, which is a James Beard nominee this year. And they cut windows in the building during COVID. And it works amazingly well for them. So as you can see on the Red Sticks window, online, mobile, and phone orders pickup window, that's what that's for. And they also now, thank God, can sell cocktails to go straight out of that window. As Alexis mentioned a few minutes ago, with the proper seal on it and the proper labeling on it, they can sell you an Asian margarita straight out of that window, and you can take it straight to your car, and then it's up to you what you do with it. But one thing to remember about windows, or two things, a couple of things. One is they have to be ADA compliant. So they have to be at whatever the local jurisdiction's wheelchair height is. So it's about, basically has to be, the bottom of the window has to be at the wheelchair counter height. So you have to think about that. If you're trying to put it in line with other existing windows for a uniform look, then you have to modify that. Potentially, if you're converting an existing window that doesn't open to a window that opens, you have to think about whether that is, or how you design that, and how you implement it, which direction the window opens, etc. The other thing is that there are certain jurisdictions where health code requires how far a window can open, how much open space you can have, how long it can be open, whether you have to have a negative air. And so one thing that Shake Shack did when it implemented pickup windows, and we're rolling those out in every unit that it can, is that the guest sets off a sensor when the guest approaches the window, so that someone in the kitchen or between the kitchen and the dining room knows that someone's at the window, so the window doesn't have to stay open all the time, and you're not wasting precious and expensive air conditioned air and things like that. You're not letting in flies. It doesn't have to have a screen. And so even if it's open to the service area, it's usually not open to the kitchen. And because if it's open to the kitchen, you'd have to have it screened off. But they have been, they've been a really good way for people to interact with guests, because as you can see in those two shining smiles, that depending on who you have working the window, you have a really good opportunity for guest interaction. And even if it's a third-party delivery driver, might as well try to have a good interaction with them too, because they're the liaison between the guest and your restaurant. And Uber is not going to get a bad Yelp review if the Uber driver takes a long time to bring the food. Your restaurant is. So that's definitely something to think about. So when you're planning for that, this is probably the easiest adjustment that you can make to existing units. It's terribly easy to plan for pickup windows in new units, but when you're looking at a unit that's already existing, figuring out how to cut a hole in the wall and then throwing the plans at the city is much easier than doing a remodel of the interior. Well, maybe it's not, but it's similar to doing a remodel of the interior to add a second line or to add smart lockers. And so it's just another option. But I think it's a really good one. And I think that with proper training, it gives you the opportunity to have a really good guest touch. Let's go to the next slide. No, that's not the right slide. Okay, I'm going to share two pictures. Can we go back? We'll go back to the smiley people and not my name. So I'm going to take control of the sharing real quick. And we're going to talk about Son of a Butcher. So Son of a Butcher took over a restaurant that had been in Dallas for 40 years, I think, and they completely renovated it, except they didn't, and they left the window. They added a window on the side, and when they were permitted with the city of Dallas, they were permitted as a restaurant without drive-through. And when they started letting cars go through the window that you see on the left, the city raised hell about it and said, "You are a restaurant without a drive-through, please stop." And so Now it is a pickup window. And because thankfully this restaurant exists in a very walkable neighborhood, the pickup window is a really interesting place for guests to engage not only with restaurant employees, but with each other. And it was originally, it made them very angry that they couldn't use the drive-through for cars. But it ended up being much better, mainly because it would have caused terrible, terrible traffic congestion. And because the patio is right there, in the many months of our local North Texas weather where you can be outside, that walk-up window has been really great. So that window was not there when it was a hamburger joint run by a couple of brothers for 40 years. And cutting that into the kitchen has really provided a good opportunity. So I wanted to give that as another look at an alternative that you can consider, especially in high density walkable areas, because I think that has really that can really provide some cool opportunities. And then I'm gonna stop sharing that, and then I'm gonna share one more picture because sort of in closing, the time goes so fast. But in closing, I think that the key to designing the future really is prototyping. And if you are not sure about sort of how to address the past, then look at the future. And we're seeing so many, especially QSR brands, with weird new prototypes, Hardee's, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box. I mean, Kentucky Fried Chicken, all kinds of people. So this Taco Bell is basically, it's reminiscent of the Taco Bell out of Demolition Man, which is a movie that starred Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock. And Taco Bell was the only restaurant to survive the franchise wars and became fine dining in the future. So if that intrigues you, you should check that movie out. But this is an existing prototype. Well, it exists now, and very futuristic, very drive-through friendly. And gosh, I mean, building a prototype or building a commissary kitchen can really be an interesting alternative. Now, like, I'm not telling you to go spend millions of dollars on a prototype with the hope of not rolling it out, but to the extent that you can, I mean, smaller is bigger now. And we're seeing prototypes rolled out in shipping containers and really small spaces, especially when those small spaces can be supported by a local commissary kitchen. Even Jack in the Box is prototyping restaurants that have, I'm giving you your screen back, that have 2 drive-throughs, one for traditional drive up and one for only customer pre-order and third-party delivery pickup. And so that takes real estate planning, that takes site selection, it takes training on adjusting the mindset of your site selection people, your real estate people, to think about what kind of footprint you need. But I mean, the future really is guest convenience, and adapting to third-party delivery. And if you can swing it, if the planets line up and you can put your own delivery program in place, man, so much money there to be made on those. So anyway, commissary kitchens and cutting holes in the wall, it's the way to go.
Thanks, David. As always, interesting, fascinating, creative. Thanks much. So, David, you're always kind of looking ahead. What do you see happening in the delivery space? Do you see more folks creating their own delivery services? Do you see more folks being able to negotiate with the big boys and reduce the expense? What do you see happening there? You've got 1 minute.
I am worried about consolidation in the delivery space. Somebody is going to win in the DoorDash versus Uber Eats fight. It's probably going to be Uber Eats. When there is consolidation, there will be much less negotiation. And so I think we need to keep attention on that, because if there is only one delivery service, then you know what happens when there is a dictatorship or a monarchy or a monopoly. We as the consumer lose the power. So I think we need to keep our eyes on that fight a little bit.
Yeah, that's great thoughts. David, as always, thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.